The sex addicts has just taken it too far to where their pattern is very cyclical. It's a clear pattern of shame, acting out, remorse, shame, acting out, remorse, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And the highs and the lows.
How does a person identify that they have sexual addiction? Mm-hmm. And what do they do about it when they realize it?
There's definitely an inkling. I will have to say, because of the shame, with sex addiction, it can lie underneath. So a lot of people do not come into recovery from sex addiction until something horrible has happened. Maybe they have been caught by their wife or their spouse. Mm-hmm. And it is so destructive that they're like, oh my gosh, I have to do something about this.
This is the Recovery Guide podcast with Michael Herbert, where powerful stories and actionable insights empower individuals on their recovery journey to build resilience and make a lasting impact. I'm glad you're here, so let's get started. Today, we're sitting with Kim Litton, who is a person in long-term recovery from addiction and love, and also is a licensed social worker, a certified addiction counselor, and is talking about her relationships with clients and addressing their sexual addiction and moving them into recovery. If you want to learn about sexual addiction, if you think you might have a sexual addiction problem, if you need to develop and learn the tools to use to address it, this is the episode for you. So we're going to talk about sex honestly and openly, and my hope is you're going to get a whole lot out of this.
So a sex therapist is someone who will help their clients with sexual difficulties in the bedroom, say erectile dysfunction, or for women, maybe it would be they don't have the arousal, or they find it hard to get into sex, or they're finding it hard to want to be with their husband and vice versa. Mm-hmm. They're having problems in the bedroom, right? Okay. And that would look more towards, emotional issues or health issues. Sex addiction therapist, we're looking at the pattern of addiction. Is there a pattern there? A sex addiction therapist is specifically looking at the sex addiction and or pornography addiction. So what that would look like is much different from a sex therapist.
So would a sex therapist work with a person with sexual addiction?
They can. It's tricky because some sex therapists do not believe in sex addiction. So
what do they believe compulsive sexual behavior is then? Is it just?
They don't really call it addiction or compulsive sexual behavior. They just don't really acknowledge it from my experience.
They just, Joe Blow is having a lot of sex? I mean, is that what they call it, or too much sex, or sex that's getting him in trouble? Or?
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Things like that. Sex therapists lean more, and don't get me wrong, I mean, sex positivity is wonderful in a healthy way, mm-hmm. though, with healthy boundaries, with healthy people. So sex addiction we've just taken it too far, the client, The sex addicts has just taken it too far to where their pattern is very cyclical, and it's a clear pattern of shame, acting out, remorse, shame, acting out, remorse, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And the highs and the lows.
Okay.
So I guess the difference there would be, I do want to say though, Michael, a sex therapist is really great for the sex addict in recovery with their spouse, because integrating sexuality within the relationship after sex addiction has been present, after betrayal has been present, that's a tough area for mm-hmm. couples. So it is important to maybe seek a sex therapist, but only one who's very understanding and schooled in sex addiction.
So before we get more into it, I want to acknowledge, or at least maybe it's my bias, about sex in general seems to be a hard topic to talk about honestly. And, sex is almost taboo.
Sure.
How people learn about sex is not like there's an instruction book, or even the discussion. You always hear people talk about the birds and the bees. I don't know anybody who really has had the discussion about the birds and the bees,
Right.
other than they talk about the birds and the bees.
Right.
And talking about sex honestly, I don't know, I would say, be embarrassing for some people.
Absolutely.
It just doesn't feel normal. It feels weird when same gender is talking about it. It seems weird, the thought of it, when different genders are talking about it. I mean, it's not weird to me because of the work that I do.
But society.
But in general, for society, it's difficult. I also want to acknowledge, at least in my experience, I would imagine 60 to 70% of the identified addicts and alcoholics that I work with have sexual dysfunction or sexual addiction that's not fully talked about or realized. And sometimes it's from the shame and the stigma. Sometimes it's from, if they're involved in a 12-step fellowship, the singleness of purpose. We only talk about this here, but people are suffering with this sexual stuff. And I don't know that it can be, I don't know how it gets relieved or people get help with it. So can you talk a little bit about how do people, how do they address it? Also, maybe talk about, you're a woman. What is it if a man comes to you? What do you do if your client is attracted to you? Because all of these things happen in a normal course of therapy
100%.
anyway. And then when you're talking about sex, it really,
Absolutely. What do you want me to go with first?
So let's talk about, how does a person identify that they have sexual addiction, and what do they do about it when they realize it? Although I would imagine most people know that they have it.
There's an inkling, for sure. There's definitely an inkling. I will have to say, because of the shame, absolutely, it is a hidden addiction for a long time. Because of the shame, and you can do it under wraps. It's not like drugs and alcohol, where you use drugs and alcohol, at some point, people are going to start noticing you're drunk when you come to work, or you're using too many drugs, you're spending too much money, so on and so forth. With sex addiction, it can lie underneath and look, it's non-detectable for a long period of time.
Sure.
So a lot of people do not come into recovery from sex addiction until something horrible has happened. Perhaps something very humiliating. Maybe they've been arrested for, soliciting sex workers. Maybe they have been caught by their wife or their spouse. And it is so destructive that they're like, oh my gosh, I have to do something about this. So a lot of times, many times, I will have to say, I don't know the percentage, but I would say more times than not, for men, it is definitely a bottom of some sort that's very humiliating and kind of like a, oh gosh, I'm sorry. I'm losing my words, like an ultimatum from a spouse.
You know, it's weird though. I used to be in the military, and so we would go overseas. And we would go overseas, and the guys would have sex with women, and there would be a line for basically the VD clinic. And it was almost normalized. It was almost a badge of honor to be in that line because you got some kind of sexually transmitted disease, and now you're getting a shot for it. And I would imagine that there's a high percentage of the people in that line who were sex addicts. They didn't just happen to be with the wrong person, and they were in that line regularly.
I would imagine that too, Mike. And that again goes back to what is the profile of a sex addict, right? And I truly believe it does go back to our adolescence, maybe even childhood, of just not being properly informed. It's a very taboo topic. It's I'm a parent. It's a very awkward thing to have a conversation with your child about a normal bodily function.
Were you talked to by your parents?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I had no clue of anything. I'm very embarrassed to say I did not know. And that is one thing that's in my story. It's definitely a part of my story. I ended up having very toxic relationships and sexual acting out because of my non-education about it. I'm not going to totally blame it on my parents. There was a lot of other things, you know, it's a perfect storm of things, as we know. But I do think that if there were more education for adolescents about just their sexual organs, like what is going on in your body right now, you know, and how normal it is. This is perfectly human. This is how our Creator made us.
Sure.
You know, so, and if they know that, then they're not as shameful about it. It doesn't feel like a shh topic, like I should keep the secret.
Is it harder for women than men? Because you just talked about your sexually acting out. And wow, that's pretty brave that you would say that so openly.
I think, I love that you asked that, because I still think to this day that men have a badge of honor, just like you were saying. It's somewhat of a, he's the man, you know, if he has a lot of sexual acting out. But a woman is still, to this day, considered a slut or a whore or whatever if she has a lot of sexual acting out. So it looks different for each sex, which absolutely can cause the shame. For women, that's why I speak out the most, Michael, because I feel like I've truly been freed from this through my own healing, for sure. Also, like, how can I help others? You know, very similar to our 12-step work and just our work. Like, how can I help others who suffer from this, but who are still in the shame, who are not even ready to say that's me. And if they can, you know, watch my videos maybe or read my book and get some kind of hope or some kind of just affirmation that, you know, you're not alone and this isn't weird. This doesn't mean you're nasty or slutty, you know. This is a real thing that deserves real attention.
And you're absolutely right, because when you look at the numbers of people who are engaged in sexual addiction or struggling with it, they are really high for people in recovery.
Yes.
But they're as high probably as non-recovering people, the people just out in the world. I mean, those people need to get into recovery from their sexual addiction, but don't have any other identified addictions, drugs, alcohol, gambling, or something like that.
Right, 100%.
So it is, because, I mean, growing up, I never learned about the birds and the bees.
No.
I also never learned about what intimacy was.
Yeah.
My grandparents slept in separate bedrooms.
Yeah.
So my grandfather slept upstairs and my grandmother slept downstairs, and that's always the way it was from what I know. The only time I saw my grandparents kiss was on New Year's.
Oh, wow.
New Year's Eve, they always kissed, and we saw that kind of affection. I never heard them argue, but I never saw affection or intimacy. My mother obviously has had sex because she had 3 kids.
Right.
But she got divorced after 21. She was a nurse, so she worked. So we didn't have those discussions. And my grandparents were 40 years old when my mother was born. So my grandparents lived upstairs, we lived downstairs. So it wasn't like my grandmother was going to sit us down and let's talk about the birds and the bees and human sexuality.
Right.
That wasn't in their vocabulary at all. So me and my brothers, learned sex on our own through the streets, and whatever they were talking about there.
Absolutely.
And we got the miseducation, and it must have been everybody in my neighborhood got all the wrong information.
Absolutely.
And engaged, I personally believe, engaged in sex way too early.
I do too.
Yes.
Yeah. I do too. And I know for me, I was engaged way too early with sex, and I learned everything from like my older neighbors, like my friends' older siblings, things like that. And they had misinformation as well. So all of us were just going on a bunch of just misguidance and misinformation. And, for me and my kids, that's one thing I set my daughter down, and I said,
What age?
I set her down when she was 12. 12 years old.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm your person. Like, if you want to know the truth about things, I promise you, I will not lie to you or sugarcoat anything. I want to tell you the truth so you don't learn the non-truth out there with your friends and with a boyfriend or so on and so forth. So I wanted to let her know. However, I wasn't pushy about giving her information that she just simply wasn't ready to hear at 12 years old. You know what I mean? So I just made myself an open forum during that time to come to me. I'm your educator here. However, it has been a conversation that's just remained open, and I've kept it open through the years. She's kept it open too. Grateful, but of course, we only know what didn't work for us, so we bring it into our lives.
You have a son
now.
also?
I have a son also.
Did you talk to him?
I have to be honest. I'd pass that over to Dad.
Okay. How old is your son?
I passed that to
How
his
old is
dad. He's 16 now.
Yeah. And how did his dad do?
Great. I mean, I did. I called him and I said, I think it's time. He's spending longer in the showers and so on and so forth. I think it's time that, and he kind of laughed too, like we are. And he was like, okay, I'll have the talk with him.
That's supposed to be a secret. What are you saying? You're not supposed to know about that.
Yeah. So, and like I told his dad, I want him to know the good things too and the right things so that he doesn't become, I mean, me and his dad are addicts in recovery, as well as sexual dysfunctioning people in recovery as well. So he's very schooled on the language and everything around that.
So within your practice, what is the demographics? So male versus female, younger, older, who's coming in?
It really varies. Honestly, Michael, that was interesting that you said, do you see men? What is it like to be a therapist, a sex addiction therapist for men? And for 5 years, I did not see men in my practice. I was women only. And that was because of one, I felt like I was too new in my own healing to be able to in a non-biased way, treat a male sex addict, as well as I was afraid of the transference that I would have, either be attracted to them or they be attracted to me, whatever that may be. I was very scared to harm my clients, so I stayed away.
I gotta tell you, once again, for you to say that openly and honestly I think is so brave and so commendable, because the attraction that a client has for a therapist and a therapist may have for a client, it has to happen.
But it happens.
Generally, people aren't honest about that, because what kind of therapist would I be if I was attracted to one of my clients? Well, you'd be a human therapist.
A human, exactly.
And so to be able to talk about that openly, I mean, that talks about a good therapist who's doing their own work. To be able to say that. Yeah.
Because it is so exploitive to your client if you start, sexualizing them or seeing them in any kind of way besides a person who is hurting, who needs help from you. They are coming to you as a professional to get help. And that's what we need to be for people.
And we're going to go back to...
Yeah, go back.
For the first 5 years, you only worked with women.
I did.
Until you built up your strength
yes.
and your ability to do more. So that lines up with ethics. That I'm able to see what my strengths and my areas of growth are. I need to grow more in this area before I work with these people. So, I mean, that's just refreshing to hear.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I got to tell you, that's a great, I'm thinking maybe in my business mind, but anybody hearing this would be like, that might be the therapist to go to, because she at least knows what her strengths or weaknesses are, and is not going to put, I got to fill up my caseload before, what the client needs. Yeah.
100%. So that being said, I do think that the reason why some therapists do struggle with that piece is that shame aspect. It is very shameful to have the education that we have and to still admit I may have an attraction or they may have an attraction to me. This may be too much at the moment, so on and so forth. So a lot of shame goes in because we're supposed to be professional and we're supposed to be this. Well, we are professional by looking at our own selves.
Sure.
This is professional. This is what I'm meant to do, is to look at that stuff. So that's the way I look at it. I know other people look at it differently, but I do think it has a lot to do with shame, for sure. And that's okay. It's just, but thank you so much for acknowledging that, because my caseload and my practice, I'm not going to say it struggled for years, but it definitely was not where I wanted it to be, only seeing women. The male demographic for my niche, the demographic for my niche does tend to be more of a male clientele that comes to me initially. A woman will come to me more in, not saying they're a sex addict, but saying that they are addicted. They're in recovery from drugs and alcohol and they had a terrible breakup with their boyfriend, or they're in recovery from drugs and alcohol and their boyfriend still uses things, and they're in an abusive type of relationship. That is how a woman tends to come to me with this type of trouble. A man comes to me with it very black and white. This is absolutely sexual addiction. This is absolutely, you've definitely had consequences. And, there's usually a spouse behind them, like, you better get yourself.
So let me, so now I'm looking at the numbers now. Statistically, and there always has been more female helpers, social workers, mental health counselors than males. You have more males that openly talk about sexual addiction and having this problem, who go to see females because there's less men in the field. And I would imagine, boy, we're up for a lot of trouble, because you then have all of these clinicians who aren't really trained in this big problem for men. And I would imagine a lot of those men aren't getting the treatment that they need to address this particular problem. I mean, I'm just thinking about that now. It just popped in my head. Yeah.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
I mean, you may be absolutely right. I will say there are more male CSATs, which is Certified Sex Addiction Therapists, in this area. I don't know about nationwide and worldwide.
But CSAT, what are we talking, 15 years?
Has been around?
Yeah.
Since the early 2000s, so 25 years now,
Yeah.
26
Okay.
years,
Yeah.
yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you're right. I
Yeah.
mean, you're exactly right. And I know exactly what you're saying, and I fully agree. This is a tricky topic. This is a tricky area to be treated. And I'm sure there are those cases that are just being misguided and mishandled and mistreated because of the lack of training. 100% sure.
So what do you do, though, when you have a client, male client, and they have an issue with sexual addiction and they are attracted to you, the therapist?
Well, they don't necessarily say that. What I have done when I started seeing males again, and what I adhere to this day are very strong boundaries with my male clients. So that would be, I make it very clear. I am the therapist here and you are my client. This helps also with the, I will have to say they tend to be more narcissistic personality traits. Not saying they're narcissistic completely, but, it also helps with that. Them thinking they will charm their way to like getting an A+ in therapy.
Yeah.
So it does help. And that usually comes with me maybe doing a thing like calling them out on a lot of their BS in the first session.
Sure.
And I'll have to say too, I will have to say many, probably, I don't know if it's 100% because it's too quick off the top of my head, but most of them come from their spouses finding me and saying, you need to see her. I do have a name for myself to not taking any BS from people. Yeah. So spouses tend to like me more than the sex addict at first. And but really it's about gaining their trust and like fully gaining their trust too. They know that their husband is going to get treatment from me and not exploitation. They know that their husband is going to get the right tools from me and not just whatever I throw against the wall and sticks, right? However, if I do find that they're attracted to me, and that, I mean, it just kind of goes with being a therapist. I know you can identify with this too. We kind of read people's energy pretty darn well. Being ex-addicts myself, being an ex-addict myself, I can read energy fairly well. And I will then refer out. I'm not scared at all to refer out and say this isn't appropriate.
But I think sometimes, there's a couple of things that I want to say. Sometimes it's the intimacy of the relationship. Sometimes it's somebody cares about me in a very different way than
using sexual attraction.
And some of that attraction from the client may not be really attraction, but it is still attraction that I think could be worked with.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Michael. And again, I don't want to say it for all because I'm not the person to treat everyone. I'm really not.
And I don't want to be biased with just men. I would imagine females could be attracted to you too.
100%, sure. And you're exactly right. I think it's a beautiful healing opportunity when they do realize she is a safe person. And not, quite frankly, a sex addict isn't going to be like, oh, she's safe, They're going to just they're going to look at me objectively. They're going to think of me objectively, all the things. But once we get into a therapeutic relationship, then they can get more vulnerable, and I can be a mirror of something they've really never had, and they've never approached with another woman, to where it's now a safe interaction. You can be vulnerable with me, and I hold that safe with me. And it's, and I do nothing for you. I don't owe you anything. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you pay me and I give you the service of therapy, not anything else. You know what I mean? Seriously. And that right there is a huge healing process, that in and of itself, because objectivity is one of the main things that I find is hard to get my male clients out of, because it's, again, so normalized in society.
Yeah. So when you take on a client as a certified sexual addiction therapist, is there a course of therapy as step 1, step 2, step 3? What is it that you do that, how do you...
Yeah. I was trained in the Patrick Carnes task model, is what it's called. And it consists of 30 tasks, very similar to the 12 steps, if I'm being honest. And that comes with a workbook and ways to treat. Now, I will have to say, this is a very male dominant. This was geared towards males. Males tend to be more logical and think with that side of the brain, instead of with females, we're definitely more emotional. So a task model really doesn't jive with a female, but a task model is very good for a CEO who is struggling with sex addiction, any kind of high earner, high achieving men, which usually fits the demographic of my clients. They like a task. They like something to look at. All right, I've done task 1. I've done task 2. So I do think that was really brilliant of Patrick Carnes to come up with this model. But I will have to say, I think it is way much more geared towards men than
Have you modified it any for women? Or
I have not modified the task because, that's a good idea, actually. But, I have not modified the task for women. What I have done is, and I shouldn't say just me, a handful of CSAT women before me, Marnie Faree, Alex Katahakis, Kelly McDaniel, and so on. They have also been, looking at this, working on this, and they've developed exercises. I've developed my own exercises, absolutely, that helps with my clients. But with women, I do find that it's important to get somewhere around that trauma in the beginning and not after they've had some time in recovery, because they're hurting now. Their hurting is here on the surface. And with men, their hurting is still buried down deep. They need tasks. They're like, tell me what to do to get my wife back. You know what I mean? And they'll do that, and then they'll get vulnerable. But women are very much in a lot of pain. And so to go ahead and start treating that piece as well as changing behavior is, I believe, and many who have gone before me believe, that's the more appropriate way to treat women. It's just different.
Okay. All right. So it's 30 tasks, and they include, what are example of some of the tasks?
Well, like in the beginning, you're listing all your problems. You're listing all your secrets, all your problems. Then you're going to move into such a thing as maybe looking at how you objectified people. That's definitely one of the tasks. Gosh, I'm kind of drawing blanks, but I mean, to be just very blanket with it. It's looking at your problems, looking at your secrets. Then you move into looking at how you caused the problem, like what your part in it was, the objectification, then the appropriate boundaries. And not to forget the cycle of addiction is very important for them. They need to know the cycle of addiction and know this is a legit thing. Then it moves on into the recovery part, where eventually is, learning and growing into the person that you want to become. A lot of it is like checklist, a lot of inventories of like, how am I doing? Like looking back on, say, this last week, how many times did I objectify a woman? How many times did I feel aroused? How many times, so a lot of those are checklists as well. There's a lot of checklist within the checklist and, just a lot of intellectual work.
So when you get rid of when you've taken care of the 30 tasks, do you graduate or?
Oh no, he wrote another book that's called that's called The Recovery Zone. So, and it goes into some more tasks for, for further recovery, like say 2 years and on.
Yeah.
However, in my practice, I love to incorporate that, don't get me wrong, but I do think at that point it's very important to start integrating healthy sex with your recovery. Extremely, and I'm not talking about a year. I don't know. It varies for each client.
So when you talk about healthy sex, the single man versus the married man, what's the difference?
It's hard. It's very hard for the single man.
Because it seems like the single man can do more because he's not obligated to a relationship with a married man, unless you have some arrangement.
Correct.
Has to stick to the spouse.
And again, Michael, it really will look different for every client, but just a blanket statement for the single man, it is very much, I'm not going to say difficult, but it's trickier for them because they want to date right away. They want to practice right away. And it's getting them to pause and retrain their brain, first of all, to not always be looking for that is so important. For a married man, that's a pretty easy task because his partner's setting boundaries and he's setting his own boundaries, For a single man, he wants his boundaries to be more loose. If I'm being, He wants his boundaries to be more loose, and whoever he's having sex with doesn't usually know about the addiction or the boundaries, and he doesn't want to look like less than a man if he doesn't accept sex that's being offered to him. Perhaps.
Yeah.
Perhaps. And again, I don't want to make it sound like all sex addicts are like this, all single sex addicts. There are absolutely exceptions to the rule. However, that does happen when he's dating. It's just tricky. It's tricky, and they usually come into some kind of a slip. And also just kind of normalizing that piece, and that's going to happen. And it kind of maybe starts with pornography. Yeah.
So when sex addict gets into recovery, they're going to AA. Do you recommend that they go to the S meetings, or should they just stay where they're at? And what's because I know there's several different types.
Yes.
There's sex and love, there's sexual recovery, there's SAA, and they all seem to have different.
They're tweaked a little bit.
Tweaked a little, and the populations are different.
Correct.
Who goes to those meetings are different.
Yeah, you're not wrong. So I recommend that for sure because
And what are some of the differences in those particular fellowships?
I couldn't name all of them, but I can say the ones around here in Palm Beach County is more Sex Addicts Anonymous, SAA. that tends to be more conservative, more of, if we're looking in the AA route, like big book thumper type of guy, the very clear boundaries and very clear bottom lines is what we call them in the sex addiction world. And just, little room for, it's just more strict, I guess is what the word is. SLAA, it tends to be a little bit more lighter, however, still holding those bottom lines for sure. And
that's sex and
love, Addicts Anonymous.
And so the sexual behavior is one thing, but love, are we talking about people who are super codependent?
Yes.
And they just fall in love easily, and is that...
Sure. That's definitely part of it.
It's an interesting combination of people to put together.
So interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. And that's where, say my female clients, I tend to ask them to find female-only meetings. Because, again, this is Sex and Love, Addicts Anonymous, and you're getting sex and love addicts in that meeting. You know what I mean? But, however, listen, you're going to have it in AA, too. Sure. Let's just be honest. So neither here nor there. I just want to say that a sex addict who is just absolute black and white sex addict, this is more, they look at sex more as a transaction. I am getting a need met. I'm getting a service provided, so to speak, and then I'm done with you. And they compartmentalize beautifully, crazy. They can have their wife and beautiful family and children and, everything at home waiting on them. They can go and do something very egregious, but they can pay for it and be done with it, and not on the way home, they are not even thinking about the transaction that went on.
Yeah.
They're now in the family mode. Seriously. And so but when they drive to work the next morning and something triggers them, then they're going to start again thinking, ruminating, then obsessing, to where it's then the compulsion again. So it's very clear. It's a clear pattern of a transactional type of behavior. It's we're obsessing. I'm compulsed to do such an act, and then I'm in so much shame that I'm going to completely forget about it. Sex and love, there is that love entanglement with it, to where it is definitely, like for me, I'm just going to use myself as an example. I used sex as a means to get love. Sex meant love to me for a very long time. And once I had sex with you, then I thought we should love each other and we should move in together and have a family, you know what I mean? And it's just like, unlearning all of that stuff, which can be way more, deep. It's, and hence the task model versus this other way of healing that we have for sex and love.
So, like when you have a drug addict or alcoholic that's drinking way too much and they need is there rehabs for sex addicts?
There are.
And how common is the recommendation, Joe, Mary, I don't think an hour a week with me is going to work for you. I think you need to go to a residential program and really dive into this.
I'm going to say fairly common. Maybe not always, and maybe not never. It's somewhere in the middle, I'm going to say. And sometimes when I recommend treatment, that's absolutely not an option for some people. So then we have to look now at like maybe an IOP or maybe a 2-week intensive. Many people will not go away for 45 days for compulsive sex behavior. But they could do a 2-week intensive. So there's lots of those.
So there are programs that will take a person in for 2 weeks.
For 2 weeks.
Okay, that's great. Yeah,
the actual programs that are built for a 2-week method, and then they send them home with a fantastic aftercare plan, and they've just packed full of knowledge. And so those are wonderful too. Of course, I think the longer the better to untrain the brain. But 2 weeks are definitely better than me once a week.
Would it make sense that every outpatient program or residential program have a CSAT?
For drugs and alcohol?
No, for the clients who go to drug and alcohol treatment. Because
100%.
Yeah.
I think it's the most overlooked problem in our treatment centers.
I think other than men who overeat.
Okay.
Because the women get all this treatment for eating disorders.
Yeah, they sure
But
do.
you get all of these guys that come into treatments that are just huge. And nobody acknowledges
the binge eating.
The binge eating.
And how that is that cycle of addiction. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
That's not my expertise and not my playhouse, but I will say I think it's a very overlooked topic. In treatment, and especially IOP and outpatient. Because
you hear it all the time, whether it's a locker room discussion, whether it's, a guy who's with escorts, with prostitutes, who's married or is not, all of this behavior is talked about. I've worked with a couple of couples. I would say there were 5 couples that I worked with. And the women wanted to maintain the marriage. The men said they wanted to maintain the marriage, but regularly were engaged in other relationships with other women. And it was just really stood out for me. All of these people divorced over time, and I would talk to the men separately sometimes, and I would say, it's clear to me you don't want to be in this marriage. Why do you string her along? Why don't you tell the truth? And they just didn't seem to be able to tell the truth about where they were at in the relationship, but all of the behaviors said they were out of it. And a lot of them, it was compulsive sexual behavior.
Fully.
And
they're lucky to have you, Michael.
Yeah, they just could not tell. And it was just, why don't you tell her? And every one of them divorced. And every one of them I had a discussion with about, it doesn't seem like you're invested in this relationship.
Right.
And every time she asks you, you say you are. And it seems so dishonest.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sounds like my ex-husband.
Yeah. I mean, so, and the other side of it would be to the wife, why do you stay?
Why do you stay?
Why do you put so much energy into, because you're not getting what you want in this relationship or what you need, but you're still kind of fighting for it, hoping he'll change. And he hasn't changed so far.
The most helpful therapist said to me in couples counseling with my ex-husband, he looked at me and he said, have you always been with sex addicts? Excuse me. I am the betrayed partner here. You know what I mean? Like, I am just, and the answer was absolutely yes.
Yeah.
Always, sexual compulsion and a lot of dysfunction and chaos, right?
Because that's what feels normal, maybe.
Yes, but I was so offended at the time, but boy, did I not reflect on that. And that is still to this day something that I say that is one little nudge that helped me after we got the divorce, and I realized, oh, this didn't leave with the marriage. This is still, hey, I'm still here.
Because I would imagine without the chaos, it doesn't feel like good. Love. You know, so this, the chaos, it's just like...
The drama is love.
Yeah. Yes. It's just like, you know, the women that like bad boys.
Yes.
Well, they like bad boys because they're mistreating them. Mm-hmm. And if a guy treats them right, he must not love me because he's being too nice. Mm-hmm. You know? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. So let me ask you, what are some of the other things? So when we think about a person who's a sex addict and they see a CSAT to address the problem, what are some of the other things that can enhance a recovery program for sexual addiction that's maybe separate from a 12-step meeting or going to therapy?
Sure, I love that. I just think simple education at first. I do not think that, you know, there needs to be a therapy, so to speak, or so on and so. But to educate people, I think is a wonderful tool because at least they're leaving with a nugget of knowledge, right? Of, this may be a problem for me if I'm moving in with the guy after the first date, you know what I mean? Or, you know, what to look for in AA meetings and so to speak, because this happens all the time in our 12-step recovery program. It just does. And, you know, to have that education before they leave treatment, I think is really just a wonderful tool to like set them off with, for women to understand their issues and their things, and for men to understand their... And when I say their issue, like the propensity for there to be an underlying sex and love addiction, or at least dysfunction underlying this chemical addiction.
So when we take away the sex, what can we replace it with that's supportive, helpful in the because if you take away the sex, now I've got all this time on my hands.
Absolutely.
You know, what am I going to do? So what do you suggest? Or
very similar to alcohol and drugs. Like you're taking away the reward, right? So your dopamine level is going to crash, of course, and kind of be a little boring for a while. But there again, we have to fill our day with things that are fun to us. Maybe they don't feel like crazy exciting at first, but I know you love adrenaline type of activities. You know, men who are in recovery from sex and love addiction, and women, really enjoy adrenaline activities. So they may pick up, you know, their dirt bike again, or things that they've left because they do enjoy things like this, or maybe go skydiving and stuff like that. Those are healthy activities that we can implement and do. Unhealthy activities would be drinking, smoking, doing drugs, you know what I mean? And we urge against that. Gambling, eating. We absolutely urge to stay sober and everything while they're in recovery from sex and love addiction, at least in the beginning. So you got to replace it, and physical fitness, you said a dirt bike, sailing, anything, you know, to fill up that day. And it could be journaling, could be taking courses, anything, you know. Absolutely.
Because one of the things that generally addiction does, whether it's to drugs or anything else, your life becomes only focused on that thing.
Yes.
And then when that thing is taken away, you got all of these hours in the day to do what? You got to fill it with something, or you're going to go back to what you were used to doing in those times.
Yeah. And the goal is to create a life that we want to live. I know you say that in your book, too.
A life worth living, yeah.
Create that life worth living, and that you want to wake up every morning and get up and go do.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, I have to do this again. No, we don't want that. Like, what real recovery is that you are building a life that you truly enjoy and that you love. And you love the person you're looking in the mirror at.
Yeah. And so also I know you're an author, right?
I am.
So tell me about your book.
Okay, so I wrote a memoir, and it's literally my story of drug abuse and addiction, coupled with sex and love addiction. It then talks about my healing and how I've got almost 22 years in recovery. However, it wasn't until year 7 that I realized there's something else here. It wasn't until year 10 that I started doing something. What I mean is like, so I kind of normalized that recovery is where we start, peeling back the layers of the onion, so to speak. And especially when we get into relationships, their relationships are going to bring up our own stuff. That's what intimacy will do.
Yeah.
But it's a wonderful opportunity then to work on ourselves. So anyway, I digress. It's my story of recovery, but also the redemption from it, the freedom that I've gained from this story. It's very raw, and I share very humiliating things that were once humiliating to me, I'm sorry, but are not anymore. And by doing that, my hope was to help other women just like me. Any
regrets and disclosure? Or
No, there was at first. More so around my mother and father. Like I thought I was betraying them. We've got that duality here,
Yeah.
I'm betraying them, and at the same time, I was freeing them at the same time, like I was freeing us as a family. I feel like it wasn't all me. It was them too, and so we've had just a beautiful healing
Any pushback from them at any
100%.
point? 100%.
Very hurt with me. My mother didn't talk to me for 2 months.
Yeah.
She was very hurt, very hurt. But, after we talked about it, she thought that I hated her. And I get emotional.
Well,
but
take your time. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, Mom, I was just terrified of you when I was little, It turned to anger. And then it was anger, I was using to dilute the anger. But that's what healing has done. It's helped me look at you with compassion. Like raising these kids by myself, I look at my mother and think, oh my gosh, she did this with 3 kids. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like no tools. And my dad was at work literally all the time, so he was not supportive at all. Very avoidant type of guy, So it's like, gosh, she really was strong in her own way. Did she cause chaos? Yes.
So what do you think the tears are about when you think about your mom and you think about that past?
Probably my mom, just that she was hurt by it.
So
my mom and her feeling bad, I think, and feeling guilty because I'm coming from a place of freedom about it because I really have done my work. And it really isn't a place of animosity or yuck about her, And so I guess that's, it really comes from a place of love and compassion.
Yeah, and it also, at least from how I'm hearing it, comes from a place of empathy.
Very much.
That you care about your mother and her feelings, and it was hard for her. And when it's hard for her, it's hard for you to kind of relive it and experience it again. Yeah.
Exactly.
So that's the sign of a good daughter.
Thank you.
That you can be there for your mother.
Yeah, thank you.
And like they say, sometimes it's harder before it gets easier.
Exactly.
And writing the book and putting it out there is harder, but then it gets easier. And I think the ease comes from communication.
I do
the
too.
fact that we don't talk is what makes it always so hard.
Isn't that the truth?
But as soon as we start to talk and open up,
exactly.
And you can get a sigh of relief, and we can move forward. And I'm not alone. You're not alone. We're kind of in this together. Yeah. So that's great.
Absolutely. My family always said, even when I was little, Kim says the stuff nobody else wants to wants to talk about.
Yeah.
I always did. And so this has given us that opportunity. I will say we just communicate more, which builds more intimacy.
So what does the future hold for Kim Litton? And any new projects? What's
I don't know. More will be revealed. I am regular on social media because I enjoy it, and it's fun for me right now. It's a way to get my creativity out. And
I see on social media you're all over the
thank you.
the TikTok.
I just find it as a way, like I'm helping the person who doesn't. It's so obvious to people like you and I, Michael, because we're here in a mecca of recovery and everything like that. But, the people who are in different areas of the country still are very, in the dark about a lot of this stuff. So I feel like if I can just reach more people like that, then, and it's fun. The minute it stops being fun, I'm done. But, and then I have my private practice. So I'm still just doing the thing. And, I'm just happy to be at this place in my life where my kids are older and I can breathe.
Yeah. So how do people find your book? How do people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about sexual addiction or recovery?
Sure.
How do they find you? And
I have a website, klcounseling.com. I have, that is also my email, Kim Litton, Litton @klcounseling.com. And my handles on social media are Kim Litton, LCSW, CSAT. What else do we need
LinkedIn?
to know? Litton, Litton.
No, are you on LinkedIn?
Oh, wow. Sorry.
LinkedIn.
I'm so
Litton.
used to that.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm on LinkedIn, Kim Litton, KL Counseling. What else? TikTok, same handle, Kim Litton,
Facebook?
LCS. Same handle, KL Counseling.
And where do we find your book?
You can find it on my website. You can also find it on Amazon.
And give the title one more time.
I Do It For Her, a memoir of recovery and redemption from sex, love, and substances.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Kim, for showing up and for being here.
Yeah.
It's been my pleasure.
Oh,
I've
so
learned
much
a
fun.
lot, and I hope the audience will learn a lot too.
Good.
Yeah.
Same.
This was great.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. This episode is sponsored by Guardian Recovery. If you or someone you love is struggling with addiction or mental health challenges, Guardian can help. Visit guardianrecovery.com or call the number below for confidential support and guidance.